Hi, I'm Donna Leisner. I've lived most of my life in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I love it here. This is my story. I've always been aware of the heart disease in my family among the men, most who have started treatment young and died in their early 70s. The women have all been fine, so I was hanging my hat on that. But I still decided to start leading a really healthy lifestyle. So I watched for since my 20s, so many years. I've watched my weight, I've watched what I ate. I cut down on fat even before it was popular, and I exercise a lot. And I hope by doing that, I would bypass this heart disease syndrome that the men had. However, by my early 70s, I was beginning to have problems, but none of them were heart disease symptoms. I was getting really tired all the time, considering the great shape I was in. I mean, my muscles were always strong, but the legs just weren't functioning the way they should. And I was getting lightheaded. Things just weren't doing too great. And my depression was coming back. So I went to the doctor and I discovered, lo and behold, my blood pressure was way up. So was my cholesterol. And I thought, how can this be? I've lived this great life all my life, been so careful, and here I am. Anyway, various doctors did their tests and looked at everything, and they couldn't find anything really wrong. There were no symptoms except the blood pressure and cholesterol. So they said, see you in a year, and gave me medications. Eventually, around COVID time, I also began having violent vomiting episodes. They just start totally out of the blue. Usually I'd be bending over or something or doing something vigorous like trying to wash the floor, and they would start and they would last with the nausea and everything for a couple of days. Eventually, the diagnosis was it must be long COVID, sort of a recurring flu. And I was that way for a long time until I decided to go in and have my hip replacement, which was just last year, February 2024. And then I guess things began starting. I came out after one day in the hospital. And by the third morning, I got up in the morning and it was so funny. It was like I wasn't in my body. I knew where I was, but I couldn't get any movement going because I just standing there weaving around and I couldn't get the words out. I was gibbering. So my daughter came in, called the ambulance, rushed to North York General. There, the blood test showed I was having a heart attack. Me? And also blood clots in my lungs. But after a lot of fussing around, they finally got another feedback on my blood tests from Sunnybrook. And they said, no, I wasn't having a heart attack, but I had one, a very silent one, very recently in the last day or two. So I finally got a bed, got booked in, and a wonderful surgeon started looking after me, a heart specialist. And he decided, to my good fortune, he wasn't letting me go home till he'd seen an angiogram of my heart. So that took about 2 weeks before they could get me fitted in, but they kept me there and they looked after me. It was wonderful. So I went in for the angiogram, came out, found out I had a 90% blockage in the central left artery. So that was stented. A couple of days later, I got to go home. Finally, I could hardly walk. The hip had no healing. And I had the heart problem. And I had around the clock care was nice. That part was nice. Anyway, within the past year, I've tried to do everything I can to help myself. I did the hip um, rehab first, and then I got into cardiac rehab, and that was a big help. It got me moving, it got me out again. It was starting to lift my depression. And then I met this women's group, and that was wonderful. So I'm doing much better, much better. But still a lot of things are left over. My hip is much better. My back is almost solved. Walking is a bit easier, but I still have some leftover stuff I'm dealing with. I've discovered, the doctors have discovered other arteries that have blockages or something. So there's some work to do going forward. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes, keep up with my exercise, and I'm looking forward to a new life. I really am. So my final words are I'm just grateful I'm alive. I really dodged a bullet like many of you did. And I'm looking forward to a life full of hope and joy and doing some things I've always wanted to do. So thank you so much for listening to my story. And I want to wish you all the best in whatever your journey going forward involves.